Hey there guys, I posted this video about a year ago and it got severely age restricted and demonetized. I was very proud of it, but not many people actually saw it. So I've clunkily re-edited it in places. Apologies, it's not too great. But anyway, let's sit back, relax, and please leave a like if you're feeling generous.
Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!
For the first time in his career!
I personally do hate him.
To fuck Devin Haney up next week.
Holding a gun, his hand was shaking. Bang.
My prediction. Let's get ready to rumble!
Hello there people, welcome to my first boxing iceberg video. I very much enjoyed researching for this topic, but obviously there's so much more I could cover within the boxing world. So if you do enjoy this, please leave a like and subscribe so I know to make more, and why not leave some suggestions you have in the comments below. Let's get on with the video. Boxing has been a mainstream sport for well over a century now, with the heavyweight title being widely viewed as the most coveted accomplishment in sports. But today we're investigating the intrigues, conspiracies and often dark tales of the sweet science we all love. Tier 1 depicts more mainstream knowledge, and as we progress down the iceberg, the more obscure and mysterious shall be revealed. Let's quickly fly through the first tier. Also, please let me know if I've missed anything in this iceberg in the comments, and your suggestions could be included in the next one. Knockouts. A knockout, often abbreviated to KO, is a fight-ending winning criterion in boxing. It's an emphatic, thrilling way to finish off an opponent, and the sport has blessed us with many which are very notable.
Oh, it certainly is now. Huge right hand.
50-0. Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s record stood at 50-0 once he retired, with notable wins against De La Hoya, Manny Pacquiao and Canelo. It's an incredibly impressive achievement, and one which cements Mayweather as one of the greats in my view. He did ride his luck at times, with the dubious Victor Ortiz knockout alongside the first Castillo bout, which many saw as a win for the Mexican, but I digress. YouTube boxing. I've made a whole video on the history of YouTube boxing if you're after a more detailed breakdown. It has been a massively popular aspect of the sport, despite simultaneously rattling many die-hard traditionalist boxing fans.
The fight itself was absolutely fucking diabolical.
And actually, but you called me average after 1 minute. But you called me after 1 minute of my first professional fight?
No, but you're still average.
It's drawn more money and eyes to the sweet science, so I'm not going to knock it. CTE. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy is a neurodegenerative disease linked to repeated trauma to the head. Unsurprisingly, this brain disorder is rife in boxing, yet for a more detailed look into it, I'd advise checking out my video on it.
A Congress of Clowns, champion fun makers, masters of mirth and merriment, inside splitting didos.
Now let's dive deeper into the murky waters surrounding this iceberg to see what Tier 2 entails. AJ arrest. Prior to becoming a two-time unified heavyweight world champion, Anthony Joshua had multiple run-ins with the law during his late teens and early 20s. He's been very open about his checkered past in various interviews.
I remember, I got my head punched in how many times since then? We was in Reading jail together. Years back.
Joshua highlights that his time on remand in Reading prison was down to a mixture of fighting and other crazy stuff. He was tagged by the police whilst out on bail conditions, and this period signalled his introduction to boxing at the age of 17. He would go on to break into the GB boxing team with his sights set on London 2012. But in 2011, police pulled over Joshua's Mercedes-Benz before finding 9 ounces of cannabis in his possession. He received a non-custodial sentence of 100 hours of unpaid work and a 12-hour community order. Yet being temporarily banned from the boxing team was the wake-up call the Brit needed to turn his life around and solely focus upon his boxing dream. Now, I love exploring boxing culture in countries and have therefore created a retro Cuban boxing t-shirt. If you are somewhat interested and want to support my project, please consider purchasing one. I'd greatly appreciate it. The Shopify link is down below. Thank you, you legends. Ali Avenged. Labelled as the last hurrah, a 38-year-old Muhammad Ali took on former sparring partner Larry Holmes in Las Vegas on the 2nd of October 1980. Holmes dominated every round of the fight as an old Ali laboured in the 37-degree arena, falling victim to sharp jabs and combinations. It's honestly very depressing viewing as the greatest was hit repeatedly, already showing signs of onset Parkinson's. Holmes certainly held his punches back, even crying after the bout ended, yet he was still there to win. But there was one man who was touched deeply by this bout.
Movie screen, Ali fight Holmes, and Ali was getting the crap beat out of him for 10 rounds. And when they stopped, everybody was crying. Me, cuz we all got the movie theater, we went in the car, it was a 30-mile drive, we didn't say one word.
On January the 22nd, 1988, Tyson was granted the opportunity to avenge his hero, fighting Holmes for the WBA, WBC and IBF heavyweight championship belts. Ali sat in Tyson's corner, aptly telling him to get him for me just before the bouts began. Tyson would blitz Holmes, eventually winning by TKO. Garcia gone.
I'm blocking people now. I'm blocking everybody. Block, you devil worshipping bitch.
Now, I've put this fairly high as in the social media age, word travels insanely quickly and many YouTubers have brought light to the situation. Ryan Garcia is an American boxer who held the World Boxing Council interim lightweight title in 2021 and has been routinely touted as a major prospect in spite of his recent loss to Gervonta Davis. Yet recent weeks have seen him appear to lose his mind on social media, citing that Bohemian Grove is real, while seeming to be suffering from some kind of psychotic break of sorts. He's either trolling in order to sell his fight with Devin Haney, leaning into the Conor McGregor crazy sort of style, or perhaps he's succumbing to having been in the spotlight for so long. Perhaps some of his outlandish claims are somewhat credible, but it's really hard to tell. Anyway, it's bizarre and hopefully Garcia is okay in the long run, and best of luck to him in a few days against Devin Haney. He's a marketing genius. Olympic boxing.
Let's hear the Olympic gold. My dream's been shattered now, but you know what? I have a big career ahead of me, and these ones, they're known for being cheats, and they'll always be cheats. Amateur boxing stinks, from the core right to the top.
I actually did a video on corruption in Olympic boxing if you want a more detailed breakdown, but essentially many fighters avoid the games due to a repeated history of dubious and outlandish decisions. In fact, a few years ago, Richard McLaren released a 114-page boxing report which essentially highlighted the endemic corruption amongst boxing judges, with Azerbaijan being guaranteed at least 2 Olympic golds at London 2012 in exchange for money before the games had even happened. As it's amateur, the boxers often wear headguards depending on the jurisdiction, greatly reducing the chances of knockouts and leading to fighters relying on unbiased point scoring. Unfortunately, 53% of boxing federations feel match fixing is a problem. What a joke. Rant over. Wilder Wilding. Deontay Wilder is renowned for being a bad loser. After pretty much every loss, he's had some sort of excuse up his sleeve.
No, Jack Reese definitely had delays on that count. I've seen the fight like 6 times. And definitely when he got to 8, 8 was a very long delay. Yeah. Like I said, 9 out of 10 judges would have waved that off.
It's impossible for a brand new 10-ounce glove to bend, to keep a smushed in form, or to have loose space. I highly believe you put something hard in your glove.
Yet after losing to Joshua Parker decisively on points, Wilder fashioned his most unique excuse so far, pointing to his usage of ayahuasca, a South American psychoactive brew containing DMT, as the thing smothering the fire.
I've done ayahuasca. I've been in rhythmia and done ayahuasca. I've found a lot of peace in my life.
Ben busted. Scheduled to take place on the 8th of October 2022, the WBA Continental Welterweight Champion Conor Benn was set to fight Chris Eubank Jr. in the London O2 Arena. The bout instantly garnered substantial attention, largely in part due to their fathers having faced off in the ring in 1990 and 1993, with the hatred between the pair having been palpable throughout the build-up.
I have nothing to say to Nigel. I find the man intolerable in that he's so wild. I have no time for such people. He has no class as far as I see it.
I personally do hate him. I personally do hate him.
So is there any point in me asking you to shake hands after signing the contract?
No.
There wasn't much love lost between their offspring either.
It's mad to think you can walk through me, you know.
You've got to be confident, eh?
Yeah, delusional, yeah.
We're both just a bunch of delusional motherfuckers, huh? Yeah. That's okay. Okay.
I love the smugness, though.
However, the British Boxing Board of Control released a statement on the 5th of October stating that the fight was cancelled due to Ben testing positive for clomiphene, a substance occasionally used in testosterone replacement therapy. Ben subsequently relinquished his own boxing licence, arguing that the allegations made by the board against him were biased and unfair. He has maintained his innocence till this day and is ineligible to fight on British shores currently. Now the gloves are truly off as we venture into the misty depths of Tier 3. Jones robbery.
Well, there it is. Mark Sehan has stolen the belt.
Was there any doubt in your mind that you had won the fight?
No, there was no doubt at all. I knew I had won the fight. We won all 3 rounds clearly, but
That was terrible. That was one of the worst Olympic decisions I've ever seen in my life.
Roy Jones Jr. had a stellar career in boxing, holding multiple world championships in 4 weight classes and setting the record for the most wins in unified light heavyweight title bouts in boxing history at 12. But less is known of the origins of Jones's meteoric rise, with an absolute robbery at the 1988 Seoul Olympics being a strong catalyst. In the 71kg gold medal final, Jones landed 86 punches on local hope Park Si-hun compared to the Korean's 32. Si-hun also took 2 standing 8 counts, yet 3 of the 5 judges awarded the bout to the South Korean. The American drew motivation from the cheating, but the victor would be burdened by the guilt for the next 36 years, retiring from the sport and becoming a high school teacher in a rural seaside town.
The very moment my hand was raised, I knew something wasn't right. Intuition. Afterwards, the press started attacking me when I had absolutely nothing to do with the result.
Resto no respecto. Unfortunately, the sweet science has been routinely tainted by the dark arts throughout its long history. Numerous boxers have attempted to load their gloves with foreign hard objects or even allow their wraps to soak in plaster of Paris to inflict further damage on opponents. The Miguel Cotto vs Antonio Margarito fight on July the 26th, 2008 is one of the more widely known examples of this, as Margarito bludgeoned the Puerto Rican fighter for 11 rounds, leaving Cotto with his first loss in 33 fights and a broken man. But thankfully he would recover, unlike Billy Collins Jr. Far less is known about Collins' fight with Luis Resto, which would ultimately end his career. Resto's coach, Panama Lewis, had removed the layer of padding from the Puerto Rican's gloves and soaked his wraps in plaster of Paris, causing him to batter Collins in the bout on June 16, 1983 and claim victory by unanimous decision. The fight left Collins with a torn iris and permanently blurred vision. Fortunately, the blatant cheating was realised, and in October 1986, both Resto and his trainer were convicted of assault, criminal conspiracy, and criminal possession of a deadly weapon, and sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. Billy Collins would die in a car crash less than a year later, probably the most depressing chapter in boxing, period. Phantom Punch. I personally find this one to be a bit unconvincing. On the 25th of May 1965, Ali met Sonny Liston in Lewiston, Maine for their second fight. Within just 1 minute and 44 seconds, Ali had knocked Liston to the ground with a punch that no one appeared to have seen. Sports writer Jimmy Cannon, sat ringside, stated, "I saw that punch and it couldn't have crushed a grape," whilst Kathleen Guzman pointed to Ali not being a power puncher. Liston was an experienced and tough competitor, so many deemed it bizarre that he was knocked out by this counter-punch. Boxing historian Nigel Collins speculated that Liston had been visited by some tough black Muslims in training who warned that anything but an Ali win would mean a bullet in the head for Liston. But if you watch the punch in slow motion, it's a strong counter punch which certainly catches Liston off guard, who is already falling forwards, and it sends a ripple effect across Liston's back muscles. In addition, the punch allegedly hit the Paterian area just behind the temple, being the thinnest part of the skull, and this would explain why Liston went down so easily.
From the time the punch started to where it landed, it was 4/100ths of a second, which is an eye blink.
110 rounds. On April the 6th, 1893, Andy Bowen and Jack Burke fought for 110 rounds at the Olympic Club in New Orleans, Louisiana. The bout lasted for 7 hours and 19 minutes, with Burke actually breaking both his hands in the fight's course, as the two opponents grew so tired that their boxing talents made effectively no difference. By the 108th round, no punches were thrown as the men just circled each other over and over. The men eventually split the $2,500 purse once the referee called the match a draw. Horrifically, both men would suffer tragic fates post this record-breaking feat, with Bowen dying a year and a half later in the 18th round of his fight with Kid Levine after he was knocked down and hit his head on the wooden canvas. He never regained consciousness and died at 7 AM the next morning at just 27. Conversely, Jack Burke would suffer a prolonged and debilitating battle with CTE, eventually culminating in him dying an unceremonious death in Mumblenburg Hospital in October 1913 at the age of just 44. Duk Koo Kim. Duk Koo Kim was a South Korean boxer who amassed a 29-4 amateur record before turning professional in 1978. By 1982, he was ready to hit the big leagues, travelling to America with a record of 17 wins, 1 draw and 1 loss, preparing to fight Ray Mancini. Kim struggled to lose weight in the days prior to the bout so that he could weigh in under the lightweight's 135-pound limit, but he had unshakable drive.
The Korean guy, Duk Kim, God rest his soul, wrote on a piece of wood before he went out to fight, kill or be killed.
Yeah.
That guy was a tough motherfucker.
On the 13th of November 1982, Mancini and Kim would unleash hell upon each other for 14 rounds in nothing short of brutal fashion, with Mancini eventually winning by TKO 19 seconds into the 14th. Tragically, Kim collapsed into a coma moments after the fight, suffering from a subdural hematoma. He would die 5 days later. The fallout was bleak. Mancini blamed himself for the death, whilst the referee Richard Green committed suicide via a gunshot wound on July the 1st, 1983. Kim's mother drank a bottle of pesticide, ending her life, and Kim's fiancée gave birth to a son 7 months later. A horrific chain of events, but the fight would trigger a change from 15 to 12 rounds during title fights, and the standing 8 count was imposed. This shift has likely saved the lives of many more fighters since. At last, we submerge ourselves into Tier 4, in which the tales hidden become more bizarre and outlandish. For legal reasons, I must clarify that these are not my own beliefs, I'm simply postulating widespread theories within the sport. Drugged in Zaire. After losing to Muhammad Ali in the Rumble in the Jungle on October the 30th, 1974, George Foreman called into question the legitimacy of the fight and its result. Foreman made several allegations against Ali, his trainer, and the referee. Foreman firstly claimed that Ali's trainer, Angelo Dundee, had deliberately loosened the ropes of the ring days prior to the fight to aid in Ali's rope-a-dope strategy, though this has never been confirmed. Foreman further insisted that his water had been drugged and that it tasted like medicine. He went on to say that the water he was given in between rounds made him dizzy and droopy throughout the fight, a claim that was lost to time and ultimately never confirmed.
I had a lot of complaints after that boxing match. The count, the ropes were too loose. The referee counted too fast, and I had something in my water.
He did look progressively more tired throughout the bout, but this is more likely attributed to the hot climate in the Congo and Foreman punching himself out. Nonetheless, we all know that corruption is rife in sport, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility. Liston no existing. Sonny Liston was a dominant contender of his era, becoming the world heavyweight champion in 1962 after knocking out Floyd Patterson in the first round. He repeated the knockout the following year on Patterson, cementing himself as one of the most terrifying champions ever.
Liston basically depended on intimidation when he fought. He basically intimidated the opponent. They were intimidated before they even got in the ring. He was a massive guy, and on all circuits, he was just utterly awesome.
Liston would go on to lose his title to an upcoming fighter named Muhammad Ali, who entered as an 8-1 underdog, and it was all downhill from there. On the 5th of January 1971, Liston was found dead by his wife Geraldine in their Las Vegas home. Authorities theorised that he was undressing for bed when he fell over backwards with such force that he broke the rail off the bench. Geraldine called Liston's attorney and his doctor, but did not notify the police until 2 to 3 hours later. Some feel this was done purposefully.
I think Geraldine is under the impression that a phone call was made to the authorities shortly thereafter, like 15 minutes.
He said, call your doctor and call the police, and that's what it did, like in 15, 20 minutes.
But in fact, a large amount of time passed, something closer to 2 or 3 hours, before the authorities were called.
Following an investigation, Las Vegas police concluded there were no signs of foul play and declared Liston's death a heroin overdose. It was common knowledge that Sonny was a heroin addict, said Sergeant Caputo, one of the investigating police officers, but this theory has been frowned upon.
People say, well, he couldn't have done drugs. He was afraid of needles.
Yet scar tissue and possible old needle marks were found in the bend of Liston's left elbow. Due to Liston's alleged links with the mob, especially casino owner Irving Resnick, it's highly possible that drugs were forced into his system against his will, possibly on more than one occasion, with some pointing to Liston's increasingly bold approach with unsavoury characters. It's unlikely that we'll ever truly know what happened. Whack Warren. Frank Warren is an English boxing manager and promoter who's represented top-ranked fighters ranging from Prince Naseem and Amir Khan to Tyson Fury and Joe Calzaghe. He was elected and inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in June 2008 and is seen as one of boxing's most influential promoters. Yet, little is known about the Englishman's past, particularly regarding a terrifying chapter on the 30th of November 1989.
And Colin McMillan was fighting on there. Got in the car, went to the fights. As we pulled up, I got out the car and I heard a bang. And I looked, and then there was a bloke who was like probably about 20 foot away, holding a gun and shaking his hand. I remember his hand was shaking. I heard a bang, and I knew then it was real.
A 9mm bullet from a Luger pistol missed Warren's heart by an inch, and he lost half a lung and part of his ribs. The only suspect was a boxer named Terry Marsh, an ex-client of Warren who had secured and defended the IBF World Light Welterweight title whilst under Frank's watchful eye. Marsh had signed a contract with Frank to fight an up-and-coming American fighter called Frankie Warren for $250,000 without informing Frank that he couldn't fight again due to an epilepsy diagnosis.
But I signed a contract knowing that I wasn't going to fight. I spoke to Frank, telling him my intentions of not fighting again. He said, well, go through the rigmarole of the contract, possibly thinking that, or hoping from his point of view, there may have been a change of heart.
That is a nonsense. I signed for the fight, which the Duva family, who managed Warren, could sue me for damages, or could have sued me for damages. We had a legally binding agreement.
Frank subsequently sued Marsh for libel, having damaged the promoter's reputation. Authorities believed that a loss in the case could financially ruin Marsh, facilitating a motive for the shooting. And yet, after a lengthy trial, Marsh was deemed not guilty. However, since the shooting, there has been significant developments.
I believe what goes around comes around, and I didn't know then who it was, but I know now who it was, and they've had a real crap time, and that hasn't worked out for them, so...
I guess Warren subscribes to the notion that a gentleman never tells. Chavez chokes. Julio Cesar Chavez is one of boxing's all-time greats and, in my view, should always be considered as such despite often being overlooked. Hailing from Ciudad Obregón in Mexico and born into immense poverty to the point at which his family lived in an abandoned railroad car for a period, Chavez began amateur boxing at just 16. By 17, he made his professional debut before absolutely smoking his first 11 opponents with ease. Now, I should mention that Chavez held the longest undefeated boxing streak with 89 wins and 1 draw in his first 90 bouts, but this figure is debated. In his 12th fight on March 4th, 1981, Chavez faced Miguel Ruiz in Culiacan. At the end of the first round, Chavez landed a blow that knocked Ruiz out. Delivered as the bell sounded, the blow was ruled a disqualification in the ring and Ruiz was declared the winner. The next day, however, Ramon Felix, Chavez's manager, and the Mexican Boxing Commission changed the result and proclaimed Chavez the winner. For a man with such a stellar career, an event such as this could have altered the course of boxing history, so I'm fairly glad it was overturned. Sorry, Ruiz. If you've made it this far, then congratulations. Your perseverance shall be rewarded as we dive into the 5th and final tier. Now it really becomes a little too real. Canelo Alvarez is considered to be one of the best currently active boxers in the world, having held multiple world championships in 4 different weight classes. He's a skilled counter-puncher and his head movement is simply sublime. But once you delve a little deeper into the Mexican fighter's past, some unnerving elements emerge. Back in late 2013, Canelo was accused of being partly to blame for the death of sparring partner Javier Jauregui. At that time, the boxer from Guadalajara had been a professional boxer for 5 years and was still undefeated. But a media outlet named TV y Novelas speculated that Canelo Alvarez had beaten Javier Jauregui so severely during a training session that the other fighter ended up in hospital, citing an anonymous witness in Canelo's camp. Jauregui was diagnosed with a stroke that later led to his death. There's basically no evidence to support this theory. Jauregui's widow spoke on TV, refuting the claims and asserting that her husband's death was due to a congenital condition called a brain aneurysm. Canelo was so outraged by the murder claims that he cut ties with the media outlet. He would later pay for Jauregui's funeral and delayed a trip in order to attend the service, but some have pointed to this as a sign of guilt. I think this is unlikely.
Me and my daughters think Al Heyman,
And that's Al Heyman, the manager and advisor, a power broker in boxing.
Al Heyman. Al Heyman is said to have ventured into boxing around 2000 when he managed Vernon Forrest. Over the next decade, he gained considerable influence in boxing, mainly due to him managing Floyd Mayweather Jr. It's hard to ascertain much information on the man. He hardly ever gives interviews, only appearing in the ring occasionally after boxing wins. As noted by Mo Blake, Al Heyman appears to physically avoid the cameras as far as possible. Fighters constantly thank him, and he's secured the Boxing Writers of America Manager of the Year award 5 times, signifying considerable influence in the sport. Back in 2018, Bob Arum, another boxing promoter, postulated that he didn't believe that Al Heyman actually existed. Granted, this was tongue-in-cheek, yet some on online forums genuinely deem this as the truth. I believe that he simply doesn't see himself as the star and refreshingly opts to stay out of the limelight, but there's still debate surrounding his character. Before boxing, Al Heyman was a successful concert promoter representing Whitney Houston, New Edition and DMX along with others. But years later, during the legal battle between Beyoncé's father, Matthew Knowles, and her management company, Live Nation, it was argued that Knowles had conspired with Al Heyman in order to defraud Beyoncé and steal her money. Although Knowles still denies embezzlement allegations to this day, the co-conspirator accusation against Al Heyman perhaps undermines the widespread belief of his consistently honest intentions and focus on the well-being of the fighters.
I never believe it, that he did that. Took his own life.
All of a sudden, out of nowhere, Arturo Gatti, killed by his wife apparently.
To me, it was, in my opinion, it was murder.
Why?
I think because maybe they had a dispute.
Gatti's end. Canadian professional boxer Arturo Gatti is primarily remembered today for his trilogy fights against Mickey Ward. If you haven't seen these bouts, I highly recommend you check them out, as they're probably the most grueling fights I've ever seen. Unfortunately, on July the 11th, 2009, Gatti was found dead in a hotel in Ipajuca, Brazil, whilst holidaying with his wife and 10-month-old son. His wife was initially charged with the murder, but the autopsy report deemed it to be an unaliving by rope. But in spite of a former girlfriend of Gatti filing a report in 2006 that the boxer had attempted to off oneself overdosing on cocaine, alcohol and prescription drugs, alongside a second attempt to musket himself in 2004, many are still unconvinced by the ruling of unaliving, his family included. His manager even hired private investigators. Now, there's a bunch of strange details to this case, and I'll run through the main ones, but for a more in-depth breakdown, check out Simple Mind That Wonders Reddit thread linked in the description. Anyway, the initial autopsy report stated that Gatti could have died in an unexplained accident, been murdered, or unresponsiveness. The report then later indicated Gatti died of asphyxiation after his body was suspended. So was it an accident, murder, or unaliving then? Additionally, the body was only subject to a partial autopsy, which found some substantial bruising on Gatti's body. Notably, the Brazilian police claimed that Gatti suspended himself using a bag strap belonging to his wife. However, when tested with an 80-pound dummy, it broke in 5 seconds. Gatti weighed double that of the dummy. It was postulated that the boxer had dangled for 3 whole hours.
Demonstrate for me, if you will.
He tied it here. There's no way Amanda could have strangled him and then hung him up there by herself. He weighs too much.
Gatti had actually written a new will only a month before his death, which signed over his entire estate, roughly worth $3.5 million, to his wife in the event of his passing. Gatti's wife would later state that she believed he ended himself because she was leaving him. The whole case is incredibly odd. I personally don't feel the wife killed him directly, but they were in the place of her birth, being Brazil, and hiring a third party to end their tumultuous relationship wouldn't have been outside the realms of possibility, I guess. Doyle's demise. In June 1947, after 4 non-title bouts, Sugar Ray Robinson was scheduled to defend his title for the first time in a bout against Jimmy Doyle. Robinson initially backed out of the fight because he had a dream that he was going to kill Doyle.
The night before the fight with him, I dreamed in my sleep that I knocked him out and he died in the ring.
A priest and a minister managed to convince him to fight regardless, chalking it up to simple paranoia. Yet the unthinkable would happen. On June the 25th, 1947, Robinson dominated Doyle and scored a decisive knockout in the 8th round that knocked Doyle unconscious and resulted in Doyle's death later that night. Robinson would later go on to say that the impact of Doyle's death was very trying upon him. Criminal charges were threatened against Robinson in Cleveland, up to and including murder, though none actually materialised. After learning of Doyle's intentions of using the bout's money to buy his mother a house, Robinson gave Doyle's mother the money from his next 4 bouts so she could purchase herself a home, fulfilling her son's intention. And there we have it, my full 2024 boxing iceberg. Please let me know if you enjoyed and would like me to make more by leaving a like, commenting and subscribing. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you learned something new.